Demetrius Frazier, suffocated by justice? The shocking truth of nitrogen hypoxia. The clock ticked down. February 6, 2025. Demetrius Frazier, convicted of a brutal murder, lay strapped to a gurney. His fate? Nitrogen hypoxia, a method shrouded in controversy. Was this justice served, or a descent into barbarity? At approximately 6:10 p.m., the process began. Frazier was secured, a gas mask covering his face. The air, once life-giving, was about to become his executioner. Pure nitrogen flowed, replacing the oxygen he desperately needed. Witnesses described unsettling scenes, circular hand motions, desperate gestures, gasps for air. At 6:21 p.m., silence. The gas flowed for 18 agonizing minutes. 13 minutes in, no heartbeat. Was this the painless and humane death promised? Commissioner Ham testified Frazier rapidly lost consciousness. But were the observed movements truly involuntary? Or were they the desperate struggles of a man suffocating? The questions linger, unanswered and unsettling. Nitrogen hypoxia, replacing oxygen with pure nitrogen, leading to death. Alabama authorities claim it's painless, but the American Veterinary Medical Association deems it unacceptable for most mammals, except pigs. The hypocrisy is deafening. Alabama first used this method in January 2024. Are we experimenting on human lives? Are we sacrificing ethics for expediency? The debate rages, fueled by doubt and fear. November 27, 1991. Pauline Brown's apartment in Birmingham, Alabama, became a scene of unimaginable horror. Frazier broke in, demanding money. He raped her. Then he shot her in the head. But the horror didn't end there. In Michigan, Frazier murdered 14-year-old Crystal Kendrick and raped Jacqueline Gresham. Multiple life sentences followed. He was a monster, but did that justify a monstrous execution? Extradited to Alabama in 2011, he faced the death penalty for Brown's murder. His past haunted him, sealing his fate in a state eager to embrace a controversial method of execution. In his final moments, Frazier offered an apology to Pauline Brown's family, but he also lashed out, criticizing Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer for failing to intervene. His final message, Detroit strong, I love everyone on death row. A defiant statement from a man facing oblivion. Did he find redemption in his last words, or simply rage against the dying of the light? The execution reignited the debate over the death penalty, focusing on the use of experimental methods. Over 1,600 executions have occurred since the 1970s, mostly by lethal injection. Now, nitrogen hypoxia enters the arena. Alabama leads the charge, arguing for its humane nature. Critics call it experimental suffocation, demanding judicial review. The battle lines are drawn, with human lives hanging in the balance. Frazier's transfer from Michigan, a state without the death penalty, to Alabama sparked outrage. His mother and activists pleaded with Whitmer to intervene. Whitmer expressed frustration with her predecessor's decision. Michigan is not a death penalty state, she stated, but the decision was no longer hers. Was Michigan complicit in Frazier's death? Alabama Governor Kay Ivey defended the execution, emphasizing justice for Pauline Brown. Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall called Frazier a monster, defending nitrogen hypoxia as constitutional and effective. But their words ring hollow in the face of the disturbing details of the execution. Can justice truly be served through a method that raises so many ethical questions? Abraham Bonowitz of Death Penalty Action described the execution as experimental suffocation. He called for further judicial review, raising concerns about the humanity of the process. The questions remain. Is nitrogen hypoxia a humane alternative or a cruel and unusual punishment? Are we sacrificing human dignity in the name of justice? Demetrius Terrence Frazier, born October 29, 1972, died February 6, 2025. A convicted murderer and serial rapist executed for the 1991 rape and murder of Pauline Brown. He confessed to Brown's murder after his arrest in Detroit for the 1992 murder of 14-year-old Crystal Kendrick. His life was a tapestry of violence, woven with threads of neglect and despair. Convicted of capital murder in Alabama in 1996, he was sentenced to death. In Michigan, he received multiple life sentences in 1993 for the murder of Kendrick and other offenses. He spent over 18 years in Michigan before being transferred to Alabama. His legal battles were long and arduous, ultimately leading to his execution. Born in Michigan, raised by his mother Carol, He had one sister. His childhood was marked by neglect, spending time in the custody of social services. He committed petty offenses as a juvenile, carrying concealed weapons and breaking and entering. He dropped out of high school, later obtaining a GED. His early life foreshadowed the violence to come. Pauline Brown's murder was a horrific act of violence. He broke into her apartment, robbed her, raped her, and shot her in the head. She was found by a co-worker, Tyrone Mitchell. Crystal Kendrick's murder was equally chilling. He confined the 14-year-old runaway in an abandoned house and shot her to death during a rape attempt. 2 lives tragically cut short by Frazier's actions. In Michigan, he was found guilty of felony murder and felony firearms possession. He received double terms of life imprisonment, plus additional life sentences for other rape and robbery cases. In Alabama, he was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to death. The legal system had spoken. But did these verdicts truly bring justice to the victims and their families? He served his life sentence in Michigan before being transferred to Alabama. His appeals were repeatedly dismissed by various courts, including the U.S. Supreme Court. He launched lawsuits against Alabama's execution protocols, suggesting alternative methods. His fight for life was relentless, but ultimately futile. Alabama legalized executions by nitrogen hypoxia in 2018. Frazier chose this method. The U.S. Supreme Court dismissed his appeal against his death sentence in 2019. The stage was set for a controversial execution, one that would reignite the debate over capital punishment and the methods used to carry it out. His death warrant was issued, and the execution date was set for February 6, 2025. He filed a federal appeal to bar the state from using nitrogen hypoxia, arguing it was not guaranteed to be painless. His lawyers argued he should be returned to Michigan. His mother appealed to Governor Whitmer, but all appeals were rejected. His fate was sealed. Curtis Starks, Jr., Pauline Brown's nephew, stated that her death was a terrible loss. He confirmed he would attend the execution. For the victims' families, the execution offered a sense of closure, but the pain remained. February 6, 2025. Holman Correctional Facility. Nitrogen hypoxia. Pronounced dead at 6:36 p.m. Gasped at first, then sporadic breaths. Ceased all movements at 6:21 p.m. No heartbeat confirmed 13 minutes after the gas was released. The clinical details paint a grim picture of the execution process. Was it truly painless? The questions linger, unanswered and unsettling. His final statement included an apology to Brown's family and the African American community. His final meal, a Taco Bell feast. He received a final visit from his mother, sister, and counsel. These last moments offer a glimpse into the humanity of a man facing death. Did he find peace in his final hours? Frazier was the 4th condemned inmate in Alabama to undergo a nitrogen gas execution since 2024. Governor Ivey affirmed Alabama's stance to enforce the law. Attorney General Marshall condemned Frazier as a monster. Frazier's lawyers criticized the execution. The nation remains divided over the death penalty and the methods used to carry it out. The execution of Demetrius Frazier raises profound questions about justice, humanity, and the role of the state in taking a human life. Was this justice served, or a descent into barbarity? The answer, it seems, depends on who you ask. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Research the death penalty in your state. Contact your elected officials and demand transparency and accountability in the execution process. Let your voice be heard. The future of justice depends on it.